Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your Syntha selection of choice and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Hello, it's Dave here.
And Davan.
We are Locutors of Trek and plain simple Tailors.
And you can reach us at locutorsoftrek@gmail.com or Locutors of Trek on Facebook. Tonight's theme is politics. The art of the possible, the attainable, the art of the next best, said Otto von Bismarck. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Nothing that is unimportant. Those are some phrases that, to me, those are from some great Vulcan philosophers. I'm not sure if it was
Not sure if it was Surak or
Surak
not.
or
Maybe
not.
one of his disciples.
Yeah. But those are some phrases that make me think of politics at its most basic.
Yeah, that most basic
why
thing
we
of
came
how
up-
we live together.
Why we came up with it in the first place. And
Yeah, because certainly politics arises from the necessities of life. I think one could say.
necessities
Certainly.
of living together, anyway.
Yeah. Certainly, that's how Aristotle, in the opening of his Politics, sets out his foundational thesis about humanity. Here he says it in the context of thinking about the Greek polis, or city-state. Every state, every polis, is, as we see, a sort of partnership. And every partnership is formed with a view to some good, since all the actions of all humankind are done with a view to what they think to be good.
Well, I guess we should discuss the great polis that is the Federation. And its charter and its articles, as much as we've seen. But perhaps before that, we just take a look at the idea of galactic politics. Obviously, we see many approaches to that. There's a lot of conquering. But the Federation, started by the original signatories of the Federation Charter, being the humans, the Vulcans, the Tellarites, the Rigelians, and the Corridon, who we get to see in Enterprise.
I don't know if we see them anywhere else, do we?
I don't think so either. They're very interesting, and they have interesting face pieces. I'd like to know more about them.
Yeah, they're
especially
really
since they're
interesting
original
aliens.
signatories of the Federation. You'd think there'd be a lot of them in Starfleet, unless their society isn't one that really likes to participate in that side of the Federation, the military side of it.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, what brings the Federation into being as a body politic is what would I assume bring most sorts of galactic polities into being. There's some concrete act, whether that be the conquering of a Klingon, whether it be the subtlety and ultimate coercion of the Romulan, or whether it be some other assimilation by a Borg. Although maybe that isn't political, I'm not sure.
Or a legit purchase by a Ferengi.
Sure. And amidst all that, we have this particular style of the Federation, which is invitation and diplomacy and ultimately accord, working peacefully together.
Early seasons of really the whole series of Enterprise is really forming the ideals of the Federation.
Absolutely.
And the articles of the Federation.
Well, I think some of their fundamental conceptions, like pondering about whether they should think of some rule about whether they should go down to certain kinds of planets or not. Maybe the Vulcan rule is good, which T'Pol reminds them of on many occasions, which ultimately becomes a kind of precursor to the Prime Directive. Shows really that you're right. This isn't a purely human achievement. Even though we mainly see humans over the course of Enterprise in most Star Trek series in many of the major roles.
And what we see in Enterprise is Archer, you could say, was the key figure that really formed the early Federation. He was the kind of linchpin between the Vulcans and the Andorians and the Tellarites.
And you're right, it's that.
And got them talking.
it's that new arrival on the scene,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Who
part
none
of
of them
the,
respect.
yeah, right. But who they grudgingly come to admit has value.
And like.
Yeah.
Well, the Vulcans don't really like. Well, yeah, no, the Vulcans don't really like Archie.
Ultimately, T'Pol does.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think.
true. So a Vulcan.
A
does.
Vulcan does.
A Vulcan does. Yes. His Vulcan.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, right. I mean, the relationship with Shran in particular, as well as that wonderful episode with the Tailors aboard, which, oh my God, it's so
I
great.
find you small and unimpressive.
It's yeah, it's really. I mean, one of the things they got to have fun with on Enterprise was taking that whole, what is it, Journey to Babel or whatever it's called in the original series, where they have that diplomatic function and the fake Andorian guy who's actually a Romulan or something.
Oh, yes.
It's like they get to take that and just explore all of the stuff that would lead up to that meeting in that room on the Enterprise, right? Like, how does that sort of a thing come about?
Yeah.
And it's delicious in that way because you get to see the Terrans just not get it time and again and learn their lessons the very hard way. You know, one of the first episodes in that series, I think they come across a derelict ship with these people who are being drained of their body fluids, and they go off on a mad hunt to figure out what evil jerk faces did this. And I ultimately, I think, discover that it's somebody else's life form, that, you know, that this is how they prey on things, and they have to figure out what to do about that. Yeah, it's sort of Star Trek without the pre-Prime directive, you know?
Yeah. Everything for the first time. Enterprise was a great series. To the characters, everything's just so confusing and
Yes.
different than they expect.
Well, and we, the viewer, get to have a certain particular irony in Enterprise that we don't get in a lot of other series, too, right? Because we know the Klingons, we know the Romulans,
True.
we know all of these species in some ways, although we don't know some of them the way that we get to know them over the
Yeah, like
series,
the
right?
Andorians.
And I think that's one of the brilliant pieces of Enterprise, that they were aware of that ironic sort of historical cast of the series and were able to play with that in creative ways.
I thought they did the prequel thing very well, because prequels are not always the way to go.
No. Well, I mean, easy to box themselves in, right?
Yeah. Discovery got out of it by going 1,000,000 years into the future.
a
Get
whole
out of
other
this
route out of
prequel
there.
box now.
Yeah. Mind you, they had the challenge of being a much closer, even contemporaneous sort of prequel box.
True.
In a way that doesn't fall on Enterprise's shoulders, I think.
I thought the setting of Enterprise was a really great era to explore. Like, so interesting. Like, everything for the first time. So interesting.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, the Federation comes together in a way from the Xindi attack on Earth, which, for one, first gained Earth some sympathy among the other worlds.
Yeah.
Shran went into the Expanse to help Archer. I mean, and steal stuff.
Well, yes. I mean, yeah, Shran's never not a complicated character.
I just love that scene where he's like caught and he's just like, "What? We're from the Andorian Mining Consortium. We're looking for Archerite. If you've got any, it's worth a lot to us."
Archerite.
They're just like, "Get out
I
of here
forgot
now!"
that
Like, Dagger's like, "Just get. We're gonna destroy you." He's like, "Oh, that's not very nice. You've just lost yourself a tiny profit."
Makes you wonder if Shran knew a Ferengi.
Or if Shran has been a Ferengi.
What? Brunt. FC.
Perhaps a high-ranking Ferengi.
That's right. I would love it if all of Jeffrey Combs' characters turned out to be one guy. It would be sort of delicious.
What I would like even more than that is for all of Jeffrey Combs' characters to be in a time travel episode where they're all in the same episode. And in the same scene.
One very tired Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah, it's like a magnificent Ferengi episode, but the strike force is Shran, Brunt, that creepy dude who wanted a Kira hologram, and Wayun.
Who's just there to sip drinks and look creepy.
And 7 Wayuns. That's my strike force
They
episode.
just give them 7 red shirts and say, "Go do it, guys."
We'll make that a what if. What if?
Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs.
What could they possibly be doing that would bring them all together?
There'd have to be profit in it, or why would Brunt be there?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Maybe licensing rights.
What? Transport alert?
Transport alert?
Well, I'm ready this time.
Well, the hail says trivia. I'm letting him through.
What?
Yep. Energizing.
Hello again, gentlemen.
Transporter trait.
Hey, Mr. Scott.
Lovely to see you both once more.
Hello, Mr. Scott.
Indeed, more importantly, your hail said trivia.
It does say trivia. I'm here with another round of trivia questions for you, as we like to call it. The trouble with trivia.
The trouble with trivia.
The trouble with
So, fellows, you may recall the last time on The Trouble with Trivia, we had quite a close match until near the end when Dave ran away with it. If we're being perfectly honest, it wound up being quite a shellacking in the end. So,
Turns out the trouble with trivia is losing to Dave. So I'm here to rectify that situation.
From hell's heart, he stabs at me.
Through hell's trivia knowledge, I answer at thee.
Oh!
All right. We will run through a series of questions, much like last time. I have a number of them prepared for you. After a incident with the temporal matrix last time around, I've decided to try and be a bit more general for you fellows, so that I don't sound as badly out of sync as I
Okay.
did last time. So, a good place to start to avoid sounding
The hodgepodge of Star Trek questions.
out of order. Please don't interrupt the trivia master.
Sorry, Trivia Master.
He's bad for
Please
that.
don't take a point from me. I don't have any
You're going to be starting in a hole.
yet.
Let's start at the beginning.
That's right.
Encounter at Farpoint was originally planned to be a 1-hour pilot episode. When they were scoping it out, they wanted to start with a standard 1-hour episode. But at the insistence of the studio, they wanted to start with a big extravaganza. And so they added significantly to the storyline to pad it out to a feature-length episode. Which storyline was added? This is going to be a toss-up to pad that runtime.
Q.
Yep, Q it is. One of the most enduring pieces of TNG, one of the longest through lines in the series, was not even going to be in the episode originally.
That blows my mind.
Man, the only good spot, well, maybe the best part of that episode, let's say.
Oh, the court scene at the beginning is just so profoundly evocative of the sort of like...
Does seem like an
new
add-on,
return.
though.
It's interesting. Now, I'm never going to be able to not see it that way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've watched it recently, and it really does stick out. Like, it's basically two different episodes tied together into one. All the stuff at Farpoint Station is like fine.
Yep.
Fits into season 1 very well, whereas Q's got like such a presence right from the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So I got the point for that, right?
No. But you do get, because you're down 1-0 early, you do get first crack at the second question.
Oh, good.
So you may have noticed that a lot of the Star Trek series, pretty much all of them actually, they've got this weird kind of tick to them. That very early in their runs, they go into an episode where they kind of have everyone acting out of character. So the original series did this with The Naked Time, which was the 6th episode that they aired. The Naked Now was the second one. It was the first one after Encounter at Farpoint, both of which had folks infected with the virus and acting completely against characters that we hadn't even established yet. DS9 did this with Babel. It was 3 episodes in. Voyager actually sat this one out. They didn't really do this early on, but Enterprise got back to the tradition pretty early on. Which episode did they go back to this kind of having characters act out of sorts right off the beginning?
I don't know.
Can you steal?
I think I've got this one. They come down to a planet where they decide to go camping overnight. They get stuck in a cave, and Trip nearly kills Paul because he thinks she's consorting with aliens in the back or something.
That's exactly the episode. What's it called? And how soon in the run did it show up?
I think it... Oh, God, it's season 1.
It's first season, yeah.
I would think it's like episode maybe 5.
Pretty close.
Something like that. I don't know what the heck it's called.
So it's called Strange New World.
Oh,
Depends
that's
on
a great title, though.
It depends on exactly how you count. Broken Bow, depending on who's counting it, is either episodes 101 and 102, or just 101. So Strange New World is the third episode, which
Okay.
may count as 104, depending on who's keeping count.
Sure.
I'll give you half a point for that.
Oh, thank you.
He's
Yeah.
tough with the points, Dave.
Yeah. You had
Tough
the right
but fair.
episode. Had the right episode. Didn't quite have the full answer for me, but you clearly have it from the description.
That is evocative of my grasp of history.
1, 2.
Each. So let's see. That was Davin's question, but you're already down a point and a half. So I'm going to go back to you for this one.
Ooh.
Each
Pity.
each
I'll take it.
series up until Enterprise, for obvious reasons, and featured a cameo from a member of one of the old crews in their pilot episodes. So Bones went for a walk with Data. Picard had his tense meeting with Cisco.
Oh, sure.
Who helped send Voyager on their way?
Voyager. Well, who's, like, as in the first episode?
Yeah. It's the only one that they could have had a cameo, really.
Oh, I know that one. Quark.
Yeah. Borg is right.
Mm.
There's two other
right.
characters who show up there that are. I'll give you an extra point if you can get either of them.
What? 2 other...
In Caretaker, there's 2 other characters from previous series that show up.
Morn.
I think that's a straight guess based on the fact that Quark's there, but it's right. I'll give it to you. Dave, do you have any idea who the other one was?
Boothby.
Boothby, no.
Dang.
It's a good guess.
No, he
I was
shows up in
spent
a
some
way
time on
later
Earth.
episode, though.
Oh, I was sure he was there in that first episode.
He
so
shows
I
up
keep
in
calling
the
back.
847
4
2
or 5.
pretending.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do spend some time on Earth too. Janeway's got it. I completely forgot about this until I rewatched it lately.
Like she goes to see Paris in prison.
Plus
and
them out
invites
of
him.
penal colony in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Australia might have been too on the nose, so they changed it up. Okay, Davin, you're up front, 2 to 1.5.
Who was the other one?
Gul Evek is chasing down.
Ooh,
Oh,
right.
did we
down,
see him, though? I didn't know we saw
yeah.
him.
Yeah, he hails
Ah.
Chakotay.
Man,
gives
Evek
him...
shows up in 3 series.
He does, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. He's cool, too. I like Evek. Yeah, good one, Scott. I like
That's
that
nice.
All right. Dave, this one's for you.
Okay.
Who is the first female chief engineer we see in any series?
I mean, I'm tempted to say B'Elanna Torres, but I think there's a colleague of Geordie's that shows up. No. There's a female officer who is chief engineer, and I think she may go nuts in Naked Now.
Think
But
I'm
I
gonna
don't
give
know
you
what her
another
name
half
is.
point for that one.
I know she's got curly hair.
one.
I don't know. I think she might actually have straight hair.
Really? I'm thinking of the wrong
there
person.
goes that half point.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the half point because you did pull it out at the end.
He's feeling
Apparently, her
generous
name
today,
is
Dave.
McDougal, but
McDougal.
I don't really
okay.
think she says that. She doesn't get much to say. She's got a couple scenes in there, but they
Mhm.
just kind of refer to her. I think they literally call her as chief engineer to the bridge, which
Yeah.
isn't even Picard doing it. It's Wesley with his.
Yeah.
with his
That's why I
voice
remember
box
it. From,
thing.
yeah, exactly. And noticeably, Geordie is very soon the chief engineer. I think she's Paula Brief, the bad dude with the beard,
Yeah,
and then
beard guy.
Geordie.
Jordy
becomes chief
doesn't get
engineer
it
by
until the
season
start
2.
of season 2.
Yeah.
And they go through like 3 chief engineers along the way, including, actually, a guy who comes up and gives Geordi all kinds of grief while he's briefly in charge, while the entire senior staff is down on the planet where they're selling weapons. What is that episode called? Arsenal of Freedom.
Arsenal
Yeah.
of Freedom, yeah. -4, I think.
Yeah, so Geordi is in charge. He's got the chief engineer up there giving him grief the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
Says, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. It's not safe. We got to go. Geordi finally says, okay, let's get out of here. We'll separate. We'll send the saucer section and the families on their way. And immediately, like the moment he says it, the chief engineer starts giving him grief about that too. It's like, you're just going to leave the people there?
That's right. He's like the clean-cut guy with black hair, I think. Yeah.
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 Kind of a... There's a good thing they got a chief engineer.
It is.
Yeah.
Thing, yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
All right.
I had some trouble with that position off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of an important position
Yes.
to have not cast
Yeah.
originally.
It's because they had O'Brien banished to the transporter room for whatever reason. There's your chief engineer.
He was on the bridge in Encounter at Farpoint.
Mhm.
Yeah,
He
true.
was the con
He was on the
officer.
battle bridge,
Didn't have
too.
a name though. I don't think he had a name.
And I think his rank is actually lieutenant in that episode.
What?
Because he wobbles around in rank for a while, as you see. He gets
Oh.
like 2 pips, 1 pip, a bunch of things.
Hmm.
And then finally he gets his designations. He gets, I think on Deep Space Nine. I don't know
O'Brien
whatever
is
he gets
whatever O'Brien wants to be.
transporter chief. I think that's where his rank comes from, actually. They just started calling him the transporter chief. They put him down
chief.
there.
Mm,
And so he became a chief.
Chief.
By
pretty
rank.
awesome. I think technically he was probably a chief petty officer or something.
Yeah.
Probably.
But yeah.
Non-commissioned, which
Yeah.
makes it even stranger. Obviously, he was a background character. They didn't know that he was going to be like a serious guy for a long time.
Mm.
But it does make it poor chief that he was a lieutenant and he got
Yeah, that's
cut
true.
back. We're gonna take away your rank and
Get a
lock
real
you in the
hard, like,
transporter.
man, he got
years
his
there
freedom
between
back.
the pilot. Oh man.
Maybe there was a early O'Brien Must Suffer episode where he lost everything that we didn't see.
There probably was. I'm
be
thinking
amazing.
about what the first one was, but anyway.
Let's talk about the names of some characters. So the Doctor on Voyager.
Sure.
Eventually, he did settle on a name. This is for you, Davan.
Joe.
That's it.
I'm glad you got it. I wasn't going to get that one.
Joe.
Joe. Well, he briefly flirts with taking on the name of the guy who designed it, right? In like season 1 with Cass when he first thinks about it. But he spends a long time without a name.
Like, yeah.
Most of the series, I think.
Yeah.
So we talked about it last time. It took Voyager 23 years to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And that episode was 25 years in the future from the end of the series. So anyways, it took him like more than 30 years. And Tom Paris calls him out on that too. He says, it took 30 years and you decided on Joe?
Decided on Joe, yeah.
It was like his wife's grandma
Yeah,
or
it's her
grandfather's name. Or
grandfather or
something.
something.
Ah.
All right. Dave, this one's for you. Charles Tucker's nickname is Trip. Where does that come from?
Can I steal?
Something tells me it's like
If
an
you don't
electrical short thing, but I
All
I
right,
don't
you're-
remember at all.
You're
I'm
way
probably
off
way
on
off.
this one. Way off on this one.
Okay.
Gavin sounds like he knows
He's
it.
the third of his line. He's the third Charles
he's the
Tucker, so he's Trip. He's Charles Tucker the third.
That is exactly it.
Oh, right. Now that you say it, I think I even remember him saying
He
it.
does say it exactly like I just
That's
said
right.
it, actually. Except for the third of his line. I threw that in there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Davin, you're up early, 4-2.
Ooh.
Oh,
Here's a
geez.
chance to keep building.
Gotta keep the
Building ahead
momentum
of
going.
steam.
It's all about momentum in these things.
All right. There was a bit less thought sometimes went into naming characters on the original series. How did Scotty get his name?
His last name is Scott.
No, I think they wanted him because James Doohan could do a good Scottish accent, and I think they said, okay, go with that one. We'll make him Scottish.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and we'll call him Scotty.
Yeah.
Roddenberry liked his Scottish accent, and actually Montgomery, so his name's Montgomery Scott, is Doohan's middle name.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome.
You say good Scottish accent, but he says it's Glaswegian unless he's grilled by somebody from Glasgow, and then he says it's Aberdeen.
I like that a lot.
It's a good thing that they had already named Sulu.
Yeah,
And they didn't
Yes.
just come up with a name on the spot in the same way.
true.
All right, so Davin is out to a huge lead here.
I didn't get
Didn't
that
I get
point.
the point for that one?
You did?
Yeah.
I did.
You're right, you did.
Whew.
Wow. Good thing we caught the trivia master here.
Lucky me.
All right, so
You let him in.
here's the chance for your
It's true.
huge lead that I'm trying to give out too early.
Thanks, Scott.
Natasha Yar was originally going to have a different name,
Oh my.
like
what's-
right up until pretty close to production. They had scripts ready to go with this other name. What was it?
I have no idea.
Can you steal?
Selah?
Maca Hernandez.
Maka Hernandez?
Somebody's
Was
a
she
Paul
still played by
McCartney
Denise
fan. Eh?
Crosby?
Yes.
Wow, Maca Hernandez. That's a very big change of name.
That's a big shift. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big shift.
Plus, like most of her syllables.
Dave and I both have a point for that?
I don't think
I don't
we get
think
any
so.
points.
No,
No.
there's no points. So 4-3. Davin, you're up front.
Okay.
So we're talking about Tasha Yar. She famously kind of got short shrift when Denise Crosby said she wanted off the show. They wanted it to be like showing that the line of work is dangerous and then you can be struck down anytime. Turns out it wasn't quite true through the rest of the series, but be that as it may, they realized after the fact that was a little bit of a poor send-off.
Hmm.
So they fixed it.
Mhm.
They sent her back heroically in yesterday's Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And then couldn't resist sort of watering that down a bit too by having her immediately captured, thrown in a Romulan torture chamber and having to forcibly bear a Romulan child, Sela. In which episode do we first meet Sela?
That is in the episode where Data is the captain of the Sutherland. No, it's not. It's
No,
the
it's
one where
not.
she's in the shadows. Oh no, Dave's got it. Dave's got this one.
Geordi goes on a holiday and is kidnapped, and his it might be called brainwashed. I'm not sure,
No, it's not called Brainwash.
but I forget. I don't know the actual title. But they work with his visor, and
Yeah.
she's in the shadows. The guy's explaining it to him. There's a Klingon ambassador who's
Yeah,
running
I like
the
that
whole thing
episode.
on
That's a
the
good episode.
it's called The Mind's Eye.
Mind's
yeah,
Eye.
Mind's Eye.
You get all sorts of great views from one of the only episodes in the series. Very few where you get views from.
Data figures
Geordi's
it out
visor.
just in time, and he's like, Commander Worf, apprehend Geordi right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some great
Oh,
detective
it's-
work on Data's
That's
part.
awesome. That was a tense scene.
Because you see how good an engineer Geordi is. You know, going around and erasing all the files behind himself. And, oh, man. But that last scene with Deanna Troi is
Great episode.
heartbreaking.
I forgot that was the first time we see her, though. Yeah, great episode.
It was a
She's
little
not
bit,
really
little
a
bit
big
of a trick question because you were going for redemption part two,
I was. Yeah.
Mhm.
which is when she shows up and says who she is.
Yeah.
And then
But I knew she was in the shadows beforehand because Dave and I was talking.
We're talking about that
it.
last week, I think.
Yeah, we were.
Earlier this week, yeah.
We talk about Star Trek fairly often.
Once in a while.
in a structured, organized way.
Sometimes.
Sometimes we even manage that.
Sometimes.
All right, both of those would have probably been a half point, but since you both kind of got it, I'll just leave it as zeros.
Okay.
Ooh.
That's harsh. I would have taken the
Double.
half point, to be honest. But
All right, it's 4-3 still. We're gonna go back and forth because there's a
Tough,
few
tough.
different options on this one.
All right.
Obviously, Tasha Yar did not survive the full run of
what's up with this
TNG.
Tasha Yar obsession?
We're moving on from
No.
Tasha Yar right now. Jeez, who are some of the
Man, for your points.
other characters that didn't survive? Main
Oh.
characters. I don't want red shirts. Who didn't survive the full run of their series? So there's several of these.
Jazia.
I was gonna say there's several of these. We'll let Dave go first.
Ah.
Well, we'll leave Jadzia for Davan.
What a
Oh,
charitable-
that's
what a
noble.
charitable
That's a
move.
noble move
That's
that I
right.
sure wouldn't have done. I know what my first answer would have been.
Well, in a certain way, Cass doesn't survive her series. She disappears away from it at some point.
Yep, good.
I know one. Harry Kim.
No,
The Harry Kim we get for the rest of the series
No,
is not
I'm
Harry
not
Kim.
going to accept that one because I'm looking for
What?
like characters that were written out of the show. There's a lot.
Oh.
You could say the entire crew of TNG didn't survive because of cause and effect and a couple others where
fair
they
enough.
played
fair
some
enough.
shenanigans. So that's going to be a miss.
Ensign Rowe. Because she sort of
Okay.
goes away into the world of the Maquis, which means she's dead.
Eventually, she's dead.
She was supposed to be Kira.
This is a bit of a predicament. I did say main cast members,
Oh, she's
and
not
she was
really
in
good.
only like a handful of episodes.
But they are pushing her for a
Excellent.
while.
Excellent episodes because they were setting her up to leave
Yep.
DS9.
Yep. I
But-
suppose the real question would be where she falls in the billing on the episode.
And we don't know. Well, she's always a guest star. We
Is
don't.
she
Know,
I have another one.
We don't know for sure. Let's finish the thought on Ensign Rowe. We don't. She survives the last episode we see her.
Mm-hmm.
The Maquis get pretty decisively finished, but we don't know that she hasn't left.
Well, she
the
might
Maquis at
survive.
that.
That's true. She might even show up in Picard. That'd be great.
Could show up with an entire Battlestar at some point if you're not careful.
She
Battlestar.
got promoted.
Significantly so.
I got another one.
All right,
Trip.
Trip. Yeah,
Good one.
yeah, that's a good one.
I got another one.
Well, it's
Ooh,
not your turn.
You're running away with it. Gosh.
Trip's a little bit tricky too because it's right at the end. So he basically
Still
survived
didn't.
the run, but you're right. He didn't make it
Um,
to the final credits.
Anybody from the original series? I think their whole main. I don't think even Nurse Chapel ever dies.
Even Nurse Chap.
Because but she's a very regular character, but not a
That's
totally
true.
main cast character, right?
She gets promoted to doctor.
Well, in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that is in the
She
series.
said series.
Of course, whatever it is, Lita or whatever her name
Well,
is.
Spock dies.
And
You wanna
what's
talk
his
about
face
movies,
dies in
but-
the end as well.
Yeah,
Decker.
and also if you're going to bring in the movies, Data dies.
Yeah.
We're not bringing the movies in. I did say series.
No, that's fine. That's fine. In that case, I think it's back to Davan.
Okay.
Because I spent mine talking
Philippa
about.
Giorgio.
There's a bit of room.
Oh
here.
yeah. Dang yo.
Yeah. Okay. Similar case where
I have another one.
the
Well, in that case,
the character
the doctor
sticks around.
husband on that one, whose name I've forgotten as well. I'm wicked with
No,
names,
he's
what did I
back.
say? I know, but he did die.
He's
but he
actually
survived the series. He's back.
Oh, that's true.
he's actually marked here in brackets in case someone came up with that.
But he's
because he
back.
does come back. Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. That's
But
fair.
but Lorca is not back.
Lorca doesn't come back. That's right.
true, Lorca.
And actually, if we're going to give you Giorgio, we maybe shouldn't give you Lorca because he's dead before the series starts. It's mere Lorca that we need.
Well,
from the beginning.
true. I guess I was just preferring characters played by the main actor, who's a main actor, who gets his name on the credits.
Yeah.
Either way, they're both dead.
Yeah. Also, Data
But
dies
that's
in the series.
But he survives the series.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, Dave's alive at the end of the series, Dave.
No, he's not.
What?
Dies at the end of the first season of Picard. Picard shuts him off.
Oh. Ooh.
He's not a main
I think you
character.
gotta give
He's
him
a guest
that.
star. He's
But
not
if
a
you
main
give him that,
character.
you have
But
to
he's
give
in
me
the
this
whole.
one.
He's in the whole the whole series is about Data.
But if you have to give
I said which main crew members didn't survive the full run of their series. That's the
Dodge.
exact wording. Oh, Jesus, there's so many of these weird cases.
if you get Data, I get Picard doesn't survive the first season of Picard. So how crazy you want to get with this?
I'm gonna say no on Dodge. I'm gonna say no on Data.
Picard
I'm gonna
does
say
not
no
survive-
on Picard.
All right.
There's a couple others that are still out there. Jadzia, I didn't give you early on, but I'll give it to you because
Okay,
I know that you
Jadzia.
know that one. There's at least one other that you're.
Least. Oh gosh.
Oh, Benjamin Sisko.
Oh yeah. But he doesn't die.
He doesn't die.
Does he
He
not?
says he's gonna be back maybe a year from now and maybe yesterday.
Gold
He goes to live.
Cot.
All right, I'll tell you who the last one is because you're not really even close. It's Arium from Discovery.
Oh yeah, Ariam. I guess you could call her a main cast member. I mean, she has 3 or 4 lines before they kill her.
She's as main as any cast member on Discovery is outside of.
Burnham and a couple others.
Yeah, exactly. She's part of like the main bridge crew.
Fair
One, as much as Discovery doesn't build a lot of characters outside of their couple of favorites,
I mean, fair
they
enough.
are pretty consistent.
Giorgio
about who's on
lasted
the
2
bridge.
episodes, so I mean, you gave me her. So.
Yeah, I know,
Fair
but
enough.
she came back. Mirror.
No,
Giorgio.
that's Mirror Giorgio, but you gave me the other Giorgio, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm giving out because there's several of these. I'm giving half points for each. Davin, you got 4. Dave, you got 1.
Oh my.
It's clobbering time, sir.
Overall, we're
It's
up
clobbering
to 6 to 3.5.
3.5's
Wow.
pretty good, Dave.
Wow.
We got a few questions to go too. I'm feeling for you, Dave. Let's do some questions about ships.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew this was coming. I knew it. I was about to say.
Watch me completely botch this. Okay, go for it.
Maybe.
We
You just wanted to do an ode to Oberth glasses.
That's true.
in the main series, so not counting any like books or anything like
Okay.
that. We've only seen one Federation ship that we've seen multiple generations. Of course, the Enterprise D. We've actually only seen 2. The Enterprise A, B, C, D, E. What's the other one that we've seen a lettered subsequent version of?
I know this one.
It's not the Cripes. The ship Sulu was in. I've lost it.
That's the Excelsior.
Excelsior.
The
But it's not
Excelsior
the
gets
Excelsior.
relaunched. So it originally launches as an NX. I think it's NX 2000.
Yeah.
And relaunches as NCC 2000. But it's still the USS Excelsior.
I suppose it's still
that's a
an ambassador
misguess,
class.
and it
Oh, yeah,
sounds like-
Excelsior class, sorry.
Well, I know one. We see the Voyager J.
That's right.
Oh, man.
How many generations of evolution is it? You don't count them out on your fingers.
10
That's
generations
exactly
of
what they
Voyager.
said. That's exactly what Tilly said, and was quickly corrected to say it's 11 because you're not counting the Voyager
Two.
without an A.
2. All right,
Nice.
Tilly, you win this round.
I did botch it.
2.
I give you a
Voyager J.
couple more ship questions. That might
Okay.
get you back.
And the Nog showed up in that episode. The USS Nog.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I didn't
That's
notice
pretty
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Nog probably. We might not ever get this.
Great
We're
hero.
far enough. He might actually be quite a noted character in like Federation history or Starfleet history. At
Well,
least.
he's a captain in
Quite possible.
Starfleet or Star Trek Online.
Do we not see him as a captain in the Visitor? I'm pretty sure that Jake hitches a ride on
Yeah.
Nog's ship, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
What does NCC stand for?
I think it wasn't number chartered commission or something like that.
Non-combat cruiser.
Nope. I don't think this probably isn't canon, but it's in the TOS sort of like series Bible. It's the Naval Construction Contract.
Oh, right. That
And
makes
then-
a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Of course, there's numbers that get assigned to them. The Enterprise,
Jupiter
NCC
Station's calling them that.
1701. How do those get assigned? Davan,
What's,
this is for you.
what's that again?
The registry number, NCC 1701, comes from.
701 is the geez, you got me there.
I thought it was the order in which they enter production, because
thought
they
that
could be
too,
they
but
could
how
have
do you
them in
get
a
to
bunch of
1700
production
by
stages.
that?
Pretty close. So, again, this is not, I don't think,
Some
ever
sort of
referenced on
lineage.
screen. There's actually two numbers in there. So the NCC 1701 would be more accurate. It's the 17th model that Starfleet has commissioned,
Okay.
and then it's sequential ships
So
within
it's the
that.
first
Lovely.
one of the 17th models.
The Enterprise 1701.
Yeah.
The Constitution class Defiant, I think, is like 1706 or something like that. And so they number up that way. And then by the time you get to the Excelsior, a few years later, 2000's the 20th.
Right.
And because it's an NX, it's 2000,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
which they kind of lose when they get to the Defiant with its
Well, and
weird
and
registry
I mean
It has a
that's
weird
tricky,
number. I
and
was
then
going to ask
all
you
of a
about that.
sudden you end up with not only a kind of synchronic vision of what's going on there, right? Like this is the contract itself. You end up with this diachronic treatment of each number as a legacy number itself, right?
Yeah.
Because the next Enterprise isn't,
Exactly.
NCC 2206. It's 1701A, which I think is fascinating because they have this sense both like the individuality of the ship line and that weird sort of history, which is completely artificially constructed.
Yep.
By virtue of just having them named the same, and then this quite rational thing, right? There's something quite elegant about that.
It also it's
Mhm.
yeah it's very interesting about the way that they count forward, because when Discovery comes across the Voyager J, they specifically say, wow, 11 generations of evolution of that ship. Imagine the stories it's got.
Mhm.
But that isn't really how they had done it in the past, where it was Enterprise was Constitution class, Enterprise C was Ambassador class.
Yeah.
Like they're totally different classes of ship.
Yeah,
I'd
like
be
they're just
curious-
completely different objects, right?
I didn't look at this. I wonder when in season 1 the sister ship, the Yamato, shows up.
Yeah.
It explodes. The saucer section clearly comes towards, and you get. I would guess you can see what the registry is in there. We might be able to find out how far in advance the Galaxy classes are.
Yeah, you might be.
It also makes you think. By the time they get to like the Defiant and
Oh,
Voyager,
yeah.
they're like 765 whatever.
Yeah. Several digits.
Even if it's
So it's
76,
like the
that's an
760th.
That's an awful lot of ship designs to come
Yeah.
out in not a very long period between.
It'd have to be like the 106th
Yeah.
version of that 76th model. It's kind of like crazy.
Yeah.
So, USS Galaxy
That one would work. That's the prototype.
was the
of
prototype. Apparently, it's NCC 70637.
70
So the Galaxy class may be the 706th design,
or
or the 70th design, and that's the
630.
600,
Yeah,
right?
I get the sense this isn't something that they stuck to very closely.
Quite possibly not.
It is when they were naming the Enterprise, and the reason it's 01, they went
honestly,
through or 1701.
If you think about everything from like worker drones, little ships, to runabout sized things, to like the little Oberths and the Olympuses and the Daedalus. I mean, I think it's quite reasonable that they could have had 700 kinds of ships they've designed over
Oh, sure.
hundreds of years, because we're 300 years into their ship design legacy.
Right.
By the
They
time we
reuse a
get
lot of
to-
designs, though.
TOS to TNG is 70 something years, 78
Yeah.
years or something like that. That's a big jump.
That's a big jump in
In-
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Productive times at Utopia Planitia.
Well, I suppose in that sense, that's what the Galaxy is showing. It's the big shopping mall in space, right?
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Let's talk.
But first, I switch lanes.
I can't follow this guy. The Prime Directive. Let's talk about the Prime Directive.
Okay.
So the Prime Directive is a pretty simple and straightforward rule. You don't interfere. At its core, that's what it is. The actual legalese behind it gets pretty complicated. According to Harry Kim, I think we're due for Davan. According to Harry Kim, how many subclauses are there in the official rule around the Prime Directive?
5.
Nope. You want to take a stab at it?
19.
The only reason I asked this is a pretty obscure
It is.
one-off line.
It is.
It would have been guessable because it's 47, which shows up
Yeah.
all the time. So the Prime Directive is always presented as General Order 1, the Prime Directive,
Yeah.
number 1 rule. There is one rule on the books that supersedes it.
Mhm.
Dave, what is
Omega
it?
Directive.
Omega Directive is right.
Yep.
There are also numerous exceptions that are built in. We see it when they're debating if they should let Wesley get murdered a few episodes into
Mhm.
TNG for trampling the flowers.
Yep.
But there's a few others that we see. So there's several answers to this. Davan, give me one of them.
Like cruel and unusual, like punishment kind of thing. Like they wouldn't let like the idea of killing someone for stomping flowers was too cruel and unusual for them to like abide such a thing.
Seems to me that they had another workaround for that, actually.
Well, I'm thinking about moments where they are violating the Prime Directive. There are a few moments. One, let's think about, say, Mintaka 3, where Picard decides to violate the Prime Directive in an attempt to forestall further cultural damage that their original unintentional breach had already produced when they decided he was a god.
Does that count though? Because they already like screwed up.
Repairing.
If I was a Federation lawyer, I would look at those as two
Yeah.
separate breaches in a whole slew of
Yeah.
unfortunate events.
Yeah. So the way that they have that worded is repairing an already contaminated culture.
And you can
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at the when the Klingons
They
are
do that a
down. We talked about this episode the other day. When the Klingons are down on a planet Kirk had been at when he was a young officer, and he ends up getting embroiled in the conflict because
Taste
the
of Armageddon.
Klingons. That's it. The Klingons are supplying advanced weaponry,
Mhm.
more advanced weaponry to
Yeah, they're
to
giving
the
them like
creatures on the
flintlock
planet.
rifles.
Yeah, not super advanced, but
No.
advanced enough
Yeah.
to give them a huge advantage.
There are a couple others. Have you thought of any in the meantime here? Or do you have any more?
Self-defense.
How are you gonna need to self-defend against a non-spacefaring?
Lasers.
All right. Maybe we'll move on.
The only other one I can think of is in the lead up to First Contact. Right? And when we think of the episode First Contact, which we've talked about many times, they actually make contact with their lead warp scientist in advance of an official First Contact in
Just-
order to prepare the way. And that
Well,
to me
because
is
Riker screwed up.
technically, well, yeah,
That was
there was already a breach going on.
So it kind of falls into the first one.
Well, it actually does fall under rescue missions, which is another one.
Okay.
So you were getting towards one there. What's another thing? So the Prime Directive doesn't apply to non-living or non-growing cultures.
Right.
Doesn't apply if the society reaches out themselves, either through a distress call or if they're
Right.
sort of like the SETI initiative, I guess.
Mhm.
If someone picked up on that, if the Federation was around and we were trying
The
to get a
person who
hold of them.
contacted Data and asked for help, the little girl.
Pen pals, yeah.
It's a good episode.
Yeah.
If the society is at risk of a large loss of life,
Mhm.
so we've seen that.
Like in pen pals.
Yep. And then another exception I saw, I don't know the exact example for this one, is complying with another order that cannot be completed without the exception. And I think that must be if the Omega Directive is being implemented, because the Prime Directive would otherwise supersede it.
I would think so. I mean, I'm wondering about extenuating circumstances where it would be like saving your crew or losing them and that sort of thing, maybe. But
The Wesley rule, where they spend an entire episode kind of thinking about it. I didn't go back
Yeah.
and watch that because overall I don't recall that as being an especially engaging hour of television.
no, it's
No.
really the last few minutes that are particularly of interest. Because they're
They're good,
actually
yeah.
trying to cut that knot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It's 7 to 5.5 for
Ooh.
Davan. We got a few questions left. Davan, you had first crack at that one, so this is going to you, Dave.
Okay.
How do headings work?
Oh, headings work on a 720 degree orientation grid. So if I were going to say you're going 030 Mark 7, you're going 30 degrees away from straight forward, and you're going 7 degrees up.
Yep.
So if it was going to be -30, - then you could do it the other way. But normally they just list the whole number around. So they would say, if they wanted to be pointing downward, it would be like 030 mark 362. Right, so you'd be going slightly down.
Well, there's only 360 degrees in a circle. It would be 270.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 358 or whatever, 270, yeah. My apologies.
Yeah. No, that's a... Until your
Until I went
slight
too many
snap
degrees in a circle.
mistake at the end, yeah. that
I'd
was
love
pretty...
to claim I was using Lobachevsky in geometry, but I don't understand regular geometry enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Davin, this one's for you. In the Jem'Hadar, Quark claims that humans look down on the Ferengi because they remind them of a part of themselves that they'd like to forget. Greedy, acquisitive, interested only in profit. And then he continues to say that humans are actually a lot worse than Ferengi, and he gives you 3 historical points. And as with any sci-fi future-based show, they follow the rule of 3. There's 2 that have happened and 1 that's Quark's past but our future. And because of these 3, Ferengi are nothing like humans. They're better. What are the 3 points that Quark brings up?
That are bad about humans?
Mm-hmm.
The war.
The war?
War. It's like they had wars, like...
That's...
Yeah, war.
That's 1.
Yeah.
He gave 3.
Oh. Atom bombs.
War
I think that's from
wasn't
Little
totally
Green
right
Men.
in the first place. So,
Atom
Dave,
bombs.
I
here's a
think
chance.
Slavery, perhaps? Yeah, I'm going to say slavery.
That's 1.
And I'm not sure the last one isn't living without currency, but I think I'm wrong.
No. Slavery is right. Concentration camps and interstellar
concentration.
wars.
Well, I mean, if you're going to pick 3 good things, those
I
would
thought
be...
he was more referring to interhuman wars and stuff as well.
I wonder if there might not be some small history of that.
Could be.
Because they seem pretty
Not that they
fierce when
talk
they're...
about.
Yeah, but I don't think it's clear that the Ferengi have never made interstellar war on anybody.
No.
Probably had a lot of economic hitmen wandering around.
Oh,
But...
Ferengi
And eliminators.
That's
Ferengi
right.
might have a hard time blending in to be an economic hitman.
Yeah, they
They're
just
a little
they'd have to
too
be
like
pretty,
rubbing the hands together and laughing maniacally to sort of.
That's definitely a Ferengi. No, that's a Bolian.
It's that Bolian guy.
Give me your profits!
All right.
All right, Dave, this one's for you.
Okay.
Kirk is the only Starfleet cadet to ever pass the Kobayashi Maru. How
Yes.
did he do it?
Well, he cheated. He reprogrammed the thing.
And how did he know they had to cheat in the first place?
Oh gosh.
That was the real question.
Yeah, I forget how he learned about that.
All right, Davin, do you know?
Because he had done it before.
Right.
Yeah.
He actually did it twice before, and he cheated on his 3rd try. He kept coming back because he just could not accept that there was a no
That's
win.
right.
He's like, this
That's
is
right.
definitely the way to win, and it didn't win. So he's just like, well, this.
So he reprogrammed it so that it
That's
would
right.
work.
That's right.
All right, I'm gonna give you the point on that one, Davin.
Yeah.
We're at 8-6. Dave, you picked
Woo.
up another half point along
Ooh.
the way here.
Well, I'm not doing that bad.
Don't need no decimals here.
Whole numbers.
Let's talk about some of the production. So I've got a couple of quick hit questions here. We're going to do these as toss-ups, and we've got a chance for to make up some ground. So we're at 8-6. I'll give you a full point for each of these. Davin, you can cement a victory here. Dave, you can make up some ground.
He's giving me the Gowron eyes over there.
How many series are there altogether in Star Trek?
9.
Yep. How many seasons across those 9 series?
25?
Nope.
No, 28.
32.
Nope. 37.
37.
No, actually, you're right. It is 32. My bad.
What did
I corrected this in my notes after the fact. The internet's got this wrong. If you Google it, it's going to tell you 37. And I think what's happening there is that it's counting short treks as well as some of these like companion series. So like
So I
the
was
Ready
thinking-
Room and stuff like that.
Yeah, like 3 of TOS.
Wait, does that count the
21
animated series? Yeah, I think.
The animated
Yeah,
series
4.
was 2 of those 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I was thinking of more.
So
There's only 2.
777 for the TNG
Yeah.
ones, plus
3 and
4
2.
for Enterprise.
3 and 2 for the first.
3 and 2, so 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 21
Oh, I
is
left
30.
out Enterprise. That's why I got to 28.
And well, there you go.
Yeah,
and
that'll
then-
do it. Yeah, it's been a long road getting from there to here.
Those guys.
It's true.
Now the toss up. How many movies have there been?
10.
10, I think.
Or 11?
Oh, 13.
13 is right.
Oh, that's right. There were the
JJ
Kelvin
check.
ones too. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, across the 9 series, how many episodes have aired altogether?
800 some anyway. They celebrated the 800th episode this year, I think. Maybe 806, 807, something like that.
I wouldn't fathom a guess.
Oh, did we count the episodes of Lower Decks in there too?
No.
786. And I have to readjust my answer for the seasons. It's actually 35.
Yeah, because
I'm
Lower Decks
referring-
and
checking my
the
notes
animated
here.
series.
777. Discovery, I think, is what we forgot when we did our math and got to
Oh, right.
32.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, 786.
No points.
So I'm going to take away a point from Davan there.
Every time.
Well, this isn't a punishment. This is just you didn't get the answer right.
Every
Temporal correction.
single time. It's the time loops, Dave.
Time loops.
Time loops.
8 to 7 is what we're at for Davan.
Oh.
Drawing nigh.
All right. We're going to talk about how these shows are received. So I know you don't like talking about opinion here, but there is there's some that you can objectively say are better than others. I'm not going to give it to opinion. I'm going to use the critical consensus from Rotten Tomatoes for this.
Okay.
So, and in order to do that, we got to toss out the animated series because apparently only one guy reviewed it and he really liked it. Completely throws off the tomato meter.
That was,
Yeah, that's not very scientific.
that was me.
So out of the 8 series that Rotten Tomatoes has accurate ratings for, I'm interested in which ones are right in the middle. So that's going to be series 4 and 5 on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's 2 of them. I'll give you first crack, Dave, since you're behind.
Let's say Voyager and Enterprise.
I was hoping for you to give me one, and then he could get the other. You're actually 0
That's
for
what
2.
I thought.
So this is a good chance for you, Davan.
Deep Space Nine and Discovery.
So Discovery comes in number 4 on the list. That's one of the 2.
Okay.
Deep Space Nine is number 1 on the list.
Yeah, I was hoping so.
Yeah.
It should be.
DS9 TNG, number 3 is Picard.
Yeah.
Discovery is number 4. Original series is number 5.
Oh, original
Oh.
series.
And then your picks, Voyager is number 6. Lower Decks, and then Enterprise is in...
Wow,
Fine.
I
Lower
like
Decks has
Enterprise.
been a harsh
Lower Decks too. Jeez.
reception.
Yeah,
Wow.
very harsh.
And I want to ask the same question for the movies here. So
Mm.
Davan is up. I don't know if you can catch him here, actually.
He's up at 9 to 7 now.
9-7, and there's only 1 point to remain. But I want to
Wow.
ask it anyways. Which movie, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is right in the middle of the 13?
Oh gosh.
To number 7 or 6. Oh,
This
both.
is including the Kelvin ones, including
Of the
all
13
of them.
movies, yeah.
Oh man. Right? Like what is not?
I'd fathom a guess.
All right.
Generations.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Generations isn't especially well liked.
Yeah, it's true.
It's down the charts a bit. I like that one a
Really?
lot. It's actually, both of you are going to
Was
be
it
a little
Inception?
bit
My
offended.
first guess would
Or,
be
not
Insurrection, no.
Insurrection.
no. My first guess was going to be Search for Spock.
I was kind of gonna get Star Trek
Search
5,
for
and I'm like,
Spock.
no, that's way down the list. For
No,
me.
that one's dead last. So Search for
Okay.
Spock is the one after the midpoint.
Okay.
Undiscovered Country.
Really?
It's our number ones.
What's number 1 on the list?
2009 reboot.
Oh my.
All 3 of the JJ movies are in the top half. So the reboot, Star Trek 2009 is number 1. First Contact, Wrath of Khan, and then Star Trek Beyond, and then the one with the whales, Voyage Home,
Love
and
that
Into
one.
Darkness.
Well, out of those top 5, First Contact and Wrath of Khan are good picks. The others are not where I would have put them in that list. I might have put others higher in that list.
They offer
Like all
something
of
different.
them above Into
uh,
Darkness. for
All I
example.
can say is IDIC on that one.
They
Yeah, I
offer
guess
something
so.
different. There's
They do. Yeah, they're really
They're well
very
made.
different
They're
styles.
entertaining for sure.
Oh, visually they're quite a feast for the eyes. Absolutely, you
Yeah.
can't accuse J.J. Abrams of not doing the visuals well.
I
Yeah.
don't know how entertaining Into Darkness was.
Oh, that's the con one.
At
isn't
least
it?
Beyond had some cool things, like that world that was like that weird kind of...
That was pretty cool.
Interplanetary beaming to Kronos.
Yeah.
Well,
It's actually the highest grossing out of any Star Trek movie.
just
Really?
Beyond?
No, Into Darkness.
Oh,
It got the
well,
Cumber bump.
Yeah, because it had the Cumber
Cumber
bump.
bump,
Yeah.
All right, fellas. We have a new champion on the
Oh,
Trouble with
look at
Trivia.
that.
How cold was this revenge? Was it a dish served cold?
Well, it
It wasn't that cold.
I mean, it wasn't.
Cold as the last gawk we ate.
Oh, I like my gawk fresh and wriggling.
If it doesn't wiggle on the way down, what's the point?
It was a brisk revenge. I'd say that brisk revenge, not like Vacuum of Space cold revenge, but like Gazpacho. It's like Gazpacho revenge.
Gazpacho revenge. Okay, doesn't have the same oomph to it. A Gazpacho revenge
Well, I wouldn't
is
want to
still
steal
a
his
revenge.
thunder, but
It's still a revenge too.
I mean, it's a pre-squished tomato.
Sorry for the heart stabbing.
My tomato.
Until next time, fellas, I'm back into the transporter buffer.
All right, energizing.
Thanks, Mr. Scott. Articles of the Federation, also known as the Federation Charter or the Federation Constitution, or the Constitution of the United Federation of Planets.
So we have some excerpts, some of the only excerpts that we've seen.
It was signed in the Candlestick Auditorium in San Francisco, August 12th, 2161, by the founding member states, as we said, Vulcan, Andorians, Tellar, Alpha Centauri. Oh, yes. See,
That's right, the
what something I wanted to bring up,
Centaurians.
because that's interesting. They're people of Earth, but just consider themselves separate.
Well, as
I
far-
believe
I
Alpha
thought the
Centauri is an Earth
Centaurians-
colony.
I thought the Centaurians were independent people who may have shared a genetic heritage with humans. I thought they were one of those transplant things that have happened several times in Star Trek lore, like the planet full of Romans and that sort of stuff. But I may be wrong about that. I'm happy to be corrected. Would certainly seem a reasonable place for a first Earth colony, Alpha Centauri or Proxima.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that as well.
But certainly they are definitely early members. And if they were an early colony world, it's a very early precedent for the kind of political autonomy that colony worlds tend to possess inside Federation space, whether or not they're Federation members.
It seems I was right.
Oh, you're right. Okay, great.
They declared independence from United Earth.
Okay. Right on.
So it's funny, just to come back into the fold. But anyway, do what you got to do,
You know.
Alpha Centauri.
Sometimes we have to leave the nest before we can come back.
That's true. Fair enough. Well put, Dave.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
But yeah, we get some excerpts.
Yeah. Now I have one here. This looks like the sort of preamble or beginning section. We, the life forms of the United Federation of Planets, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, and to reaffirm faith in the fundamental rights of sentient beings, in the dignity and worth of all life forms, in the equal rights of members of planetary systems large and small, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of interstellar law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of living on all worlds, and for these ends, to practice toleration and live together in peace with one another, and to unite our strength to maintain interstellar peace and security, and to ensure by the acceptance of principles and the institutions of methods that weapons of destruction shall not be used save in the common interest, and to employ interstellar resources for the promotion, and there it trails off, but it sounds like the promotion of these ends. The
So-
common good that these people have framed for themselves.
That all sounded very good to me. A couple of things that stood out was clearly the Maquis never read that part about respecting treaties. That's the part they don't like,
Yeah.
or never read.
Or maybe are taking issue with because they feel the Federation has trampled on their rights excessively.
True.
Hail Eddington.
But that suggested to me as well, by that wording, was, which I guess changed because in the early days of the Federation, there did still seem to be, and even later on in Kirk's era, there did seem to be like that Vulcan expeditionary force, which I would suggest they would have military capability.
They might well.
But that wording suggested to me is that member worlds can't have military capability outside of Starfleet, is what that suggested. No weaponry or any weapons of mass destruction except in the common good, which their creation of that is Starfleet.
Well, I wonder if that's the original intent, or whether that's what it ultimately develops into as Starfleet begins to absorb more things. Because certainly at that point, there was a Vulcan Defense Force, there's an Andorian Defense Force, there's a Tellarite Defense League, right? So everybody's got their own armed forces, which at that point have to work together. And I think it's important to note in this case that I think there's an early episode, certainly an episode in the original series, where an all Vulcan Constellation class ship, whose production was funded by Vulcan and which was crewed by Vulcans as an act of political solidarity with the whole Federation, and with Starfleet in particular, as a sort of human-born institution, gets destroyed, and they have to look into it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's even within these bodies themselves leeway for experimentation, for trying something to see if it will work. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's not how Starfleet doesn't come to be the preeminent organized force in the Federation, and also not explicitly a military force.
No.
Really, before the Dominion War too much. Or at least before the Borg show up, I might say. They do engage in military action, but their first mission is to seek out new worlds and new civilizations and
new member worlds specifically.
Right? People to talk to, people to join, people to share their views and ideas with. Exactly.
Now, the Federation Charter also has certain guarantees. Mm-hmm. And we've seen the first guarantee allows a criminal defendant the right to counsel. Mm-hmm. We see very similar things to that on Earth. The 7th guarantee, which protects against self-incrimination. And the 12th guarantee, which defines an artist. Which is interesting.
Right.
That would have to be written into the...
Well, now, here's an interesting thing, right? So, one of the real-world backgrounds for the sort of projection of the Federation as a possible future galactic polity was Gene Roddenberry's own interest in socialism and communism, right? And what effect it could have to overcome some of the fundamentally antagonistic elements of particularly free market capitalism in a way that would promote the good of the many over the good of the few. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things he's doing with the Federation is projecting some of that. And I wonder if that guarantee about the artist isn't about a non-financial way of guaranteeing something like what we now call intellectual property. Mm. So that you can't just take this person's stuff and make your own and then and sell it. Not that any self-respecting Ferengi wouldn't. But yeah, I wonder if what we're looking at is some ways in which the Federation itself has tamed that sort of hungry beast called capital and made it a productive force in society rather than this sort of domineering runaway train, which we seem to be grappling with these days, and which certainly in the history that we see in Star Trek, they're also grappling with. I would reference Past Tense Parts 1 and 2 here, in particular.
Oh, one of the great political episodes. But they say you should probably always read a book to its end before you judge it.
Yeah.
The guarantees also affirm the rights for member states to maintain their own military forces, which the Andorians insisted upon.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
So that answers that. So I guess they can. That still counts as the mutual good.
And I suppose the question is to what extent they do. And interestingly, we even do see, and in Best of Both Worlds Part 2, when the Borg cube is coming past, I think it's Saturn or Jupiter, one of the two, there's 3 little ships that come out. I wonder if that isn't sort of Sol Defense Forces, which might not be Starfleet people, but are sort of still spacefarers nonetheless, but committed to the defense of the Sector 001.
Federation has a code of justice that includes the provision that an individual is considered innocent of a crime unless found guilty, and set free if found innocent. Now, the structure of the Federation government is talked about here. That it will be presided over by a president, for example, over full sessions of the Federation Council. They require counselors from newly inducted member states to be present at the opening of a council session. If no counselor is sent by the time the session begins, then none may be added until the new session convenes. Federation likes things to be on time.
Well, you got to have some things that you insist on, right? And when you're a polity that is what, 10,000 light years in size, that insistence on timeliness is probably very onerous on the people who come from the far end, you know?
Now, forgive me, Dave. I'm looking for Section 31 here, but I'm just not finding it. Give me...
Perhaps that's simply evocative of the nature of Section 31. Section 31, of course, being the sort of Black Ops independent, unacknowledged special access project of the Federation government, which was created at some point in its history, following upon this much talked of Section 31 in the Federation Charter, which speaks about the defense of the Federation in some manner or other, and seemingly to the people who founded it justified the creation of Section 31 as a shadow organization committed to the overall survival of the Federation.
And if it was put in by the signatories, you know, it must have just been their realization that we're trying to do something here that's wildly incompatible with what we kind of witness in the galaxy.
Yeah, and we may need extraordinary measures at some points, right?
Like, it's all well and good that we're putting our best foot forward, but
yeah. And,
but it's a cold, hard world out there, universe out there.
And you know, their states have these issues. You know, the Roman state itself for centuries consisted of a senate, offices below them, and then the two consuls above them. So no one person could ever become rex or king again, right? But in times of need, they had a dictator. One person who would be given supreme executive power by a mandate from the people for a period normally of about 6 months. And
unless you're Caesar.
When you're Caesar, you get voted dictator for life, which starts to sound an awful lot like you're turning into Rex, Caesar Julius, right? And that provokes a profound reaction, because what they see is something striking at the very foundation of their society. And I think the kinds of reactions we see from people like Bashir and O'Brien to the continued existence, the sort of continuous existence of Section 31, not as an emergency thing, but as this project that's ongoing in the history of the Federation, is, in that sense, historically not out of line. That they go so far as ultimately destroying this man's brain in order to defeat Section 31. And whether they even have with the death of Sloane is not clear.
Of course, what we see in Enterprise is, before there's even a Federation, there's a Section 31.
Yeah. Maybe that's Section 31 of the old Earth Charter. Maybe that's what they're rooted in. Maybe they have no real historical basis in the Federation at all, save that humans are part of it.
Yes, maybe they're, because we've only ever seen human members of Section 31.
Maybe they're a survivor of United Earth. Maybe they're just a rogue
Earth. Maybe they're a survivor of Terra Prime, who they were against. But maybe they're like this, rogue Earth faction that's kind of secret, but like just entrenched in the Federation.
Yeah.
And that's why Ross, another human from Earth, is kind of hush-hush about it. Like, had that admiral been a Vulcan or something, might not have went so well.
Well, and this is interesting, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
Is there a sort of thread of anthroposupremacy in
or
Section
at least
31?
Maybe it's a bit more like a a big brother sort of thing, where if they feel like, due to the actions of Archer and the first Enterprise,
Yeah.
that that they sort of are the backbone of the Federation and the original sort of glue of that Federation.
Right.
Clearly, there would have been no Federation without Earth. It doesn't seem like those planets were going at it for centuries, and it didn't seem to be slowing down.
Well, and there was no. I think that the interesting thing, that I think Enterprise posits is that the emergence of humans into the galactic politics of that region destabilized everything.
Because they didn't want to fight with any of them. They didn't want to take a side.
They didn't really want to fight with anyone, and
at least a Vulcan could meet with a Tellarite and be like, "Those Andorians are jerks," and they'd both be like, "Yeah." But then you meet with Archer and it's like, "Those Tellarites are jerks." It's like, "Well, yeah, but you're kind of a jerk too."
exactly.
I just love that episode where like they send Archer to mediate that situation, that hostage situation with Shran.
Oh my God, that's so good.
And they're just like, "He's working for the Vulcans. Why else would they send him here?" It's just like, to be honest, the Vulcan High Command doesn't like me very much, and the feeling's mutual.
But yet, they persist in working together. Right? And I think that's...
They like Admiral Forrest.
Yeah. But that's part of the
nice
virtue,
guy.
I think, what the Federation is as a project, right? Is that you don't have to agree. You don't have to like each other. You just have to get to the point where saying your flourishing is integral to mine because we're in it together. And it doesn't have to look the same, right? But our flourishings depend on each other.
And as we see in that episode, Saval actually starts to like Archer because Shran says that to him. He's just like, "Yeah, he likes you."
Right?
And Archer's like, "What?" He tells me how much he doesn't like me all the time.
Saval's a big softy that way.
Yeah, isn't he? I find you reckless, Captain. He really likes you. He called you Captain.
Now,
You can make amendments to the Federation Charter, but it takes 2/3 membership vote to approve.
right. So in that sense, functions much like many contemporaneous
Yeah.
polities, particularly the American Senate system, where you need a 2/3 majority to make any significant changes.
Now, this is interesting. The First Amendment was passed in the mid-23rd century,
Okay.
which banned slavery and the slave trade everywhere inside Federation space and gave the Federation permission to do whatever it had to do to abolish slavery anywhere within their sphere of influence.
Now that's an interesting conflict with the Prime Directive, potentially.
Right. This amendment was introduced primarily in response to Orion slavery.
Aha.
So they just wanted to get into writing some way, because they had to start dealing with the Orions, and they needed to make it legal somehow, right?
Well, and this is an really interesting point. Most of the
After
time,
they annexed a number of Orion colonies and found slaveholding around
right.
its borders.
Most of the time when we see political declarations, right? You think about the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Man, or the French similar Declaration of the Rights of Man from the Revolution, or other kinds of things like that. These are never made from a purely theoretical vacuum,
No.
These come from hard-won experience. And when we look at them and say, nope, slavery is where we draw the line, we're not going to allow that anywhere, under any circumstances, it's just not happening. When you see a polity hit a line like that, it's demonstrative, I think, both of the sort of inner crux of their ethos, that respect of the dignity of all life forms, which reaches a limit in the ownership of others.
Yeah.
And it's a moment where they, as you say, they have to create a space of law somehow for themselves to grant themselves the power to do this. They have to frame it in some way that will apply as much to them as to anyone else. And I think that too is evocative of what the Federation is sort of about that way.
How can you have this collection of species that are so different in so many different ways and allow the enslavement of one particular species when you're in a group of respecting all species no matter how different they are?
We are delicious.
Well, look, that's different. You're going to eat it.
We are delicious.
I mean, you can be understanding of both sides, as those wonderful reptilian people were.
They really seem like
Great guys.
salt of the earth people.
Wasn't that great?
You know,
I would just love to just have a nice bath with those guys.
bath would be nice.
A nice bask on the nice rock. Nice hot rock.
I'm saying they love Vulcan.
Or Cardassia. They have those hot rocks.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah.
Those hot rock caves,
Cardassia's probably nice, like a nice bask, too.
Yes.
I'll bet you Cardassians
Well,
would.
they do. They go to those,
well, that's right. The hot rock things, they lie on them.
Invites Garrick there, and he's
That's
just
right.
like, "Are you going to kill me?"
That's right.
And you think he's joking, and she's just like, "No, I'm not going to kill you," and blah 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 blah. And he's just like, "Oh, well, I guess I won't be needing this." And he has a gun.
Talk about a whole different politics right there.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, where did we wander from?
No, we were wandering. We were having a little wander about basking.
Oh, that's right. Delicious.
Oh, the amendment about slavery to deal with the Orions.
Right.
But yeah, it's like you have to respect all life if you're about a society that respects all life.
Yeah, and I think ultimately where you might be able to try and make a sort of sophistic or specious argument about, well, my life form is all about slavery, a la, Kazenti or the Orions or whatever.
Mm-hmm. They haven't been like that for 5 years.
5 whole years. Some Orions haven't practiced piracy for 5 years.
You're right, it's some. My mistake.
But yeah, the challenge of framing that kind of a unilateral action for the Federation is an acute one, because the only times they really do it are here with the Borg, and Talos 4, I think is what it's called, isn't it?
The Telosians?
Yeah, the Telosians. But there's very few moments where they're willing to absolutely lay down that sort of line about, nope, not there, not this, not that practice.
Well, I do not like Captain Baudet.
That's true. But I think you'd agree that Ben Sisko would still treat him with all the rights of a Federation citizen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Worf probably would too. He just would make it sure that Captain Baudet knew he did not like Captain Baudet.
Oh, there would be a glaring like you've never seen.
Maybe a good old Worf growl.
Maybe. Oh,
we don't see that very often after the first season of TNG. Mainly only in erotic scenes with Worf.
Yes, afterwards. Fair. We see it. I was about to say, wait, but
it's pretty much reserved only for Eros with him after that.
Or like right before the death howl.
That's true. Yeah.
No, that's not true. He growls at Klingons at Quarks to like make them back up, because they're afraid.
That's true in the free episode where he arrives, doesn't he?
Like, hey,
That's right.
Or maybe he just like shows his teeth. Sometimes he just does that one.
That's true. It's a very. I mean, if a Klingon did that at me, I would just right.
It's true, but like
I'll take my leave, sir.
They all have those teeth.
That's true.
Like,
but I mean, wolves all have those wolves' teeth.
What if a human showed their teeth to you? You'd be like, bruh.
You're showing your teeth to me right now.
You need to brush more or you brush a lot. Like, those would be your only thoughts, really.
That's true. Or, I wonder where that one went. What's the story with that tooth?
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
Or nice dental work. Or,
That's true.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be thinking, oh my, those are very intimidating teeth.
My, what big teeth you have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's only for
Klingons.
Red Riding Hood stories.
Klingons are very interesting.
That's true.
Yeah, that's the Federation Charter.
Now, you've mentioned a couple of the guarantees in particular. One of the places where the guarantee shows up, I think, for me most importantly, is the 7th guarantee in the Drumhead.
Yes.
With Mr. Simon Tarsis.
Right.
Who is nevertheless completely destroyed in that episode.
Oh, yes.
Like, there's no suggestion that he's not.
No, he doesn't really have counsel.
No.
But he hasn't been accused of anything either, which is like the whole problem. Like, why are we having a trial here on a guy who hasn't been accused of anything? But they're definitely stepping over his guarantees there, or like just denying them to him. It's like he's not getting his phone call,
Absolutely, and this is that sense of extreme measures. What they really create of Simon Tarsis is a person who exists in a state of exception. Back to ancient Rome, there was this practice there called the homo sacer, which literally translates oddly as the sacred man. But what it really was this...
Ben Sisko.
Well, no, oddly like the opposite of Ben Sisko. Almost like what Ducat becomes by the end. Or in some sense, almost what like Eddington becomes in earlier seasons of that. But the the Homo sacer was someone who had committed an act which placed them just outside of human society.
Yeah.
So they couldn't take part in any sacrifices in temples. They couldn't be allowed into public life, essentially. And anybody who saw them, even if that Homo sacer was a Roman citizen, had not only the right, but almost the responsibility to try and kill them. So it was, in a certain sense, one of the foundational understandings of an outlaw, but in a sort of heightened ritual, almost religious sense, where because the religion of Rome was, of course, public, right? To offend against that is also to offend against the state in fundamental ways.
Seems to me Garrick is that figure.
He's definitely a sort of a Homo sacer relative to Cardassia. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we see a few
I'm pretty
people
sure
who
the
come
orders
into those.
are to kill Garrick on sight for most Cardassian.
I certainly think they were doing their job.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, in a certain sense, Tosk, from the first season of Deep Space Nine, exists as...
We are Tosk.
He exists as a kind of Tosk exists as a scapegoat, but also as a very sacred Homo sacer. Someone who, by birth, exists to be the focal hunting point of a culture.
But in a revered sense.
Yeah, in a very with a real twist on it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like Tosk
They
has a
respect
dignity
Tosk,
in
and Tosk
Tosk's
seems
culture.
to respect the hunters that are hunting him on some level.
Yes. Even though it's a desperate life, it's something they're both
Exciting life.
deeply committed to as well, right? Like Tosk is
Worf would
never
love
going to
it.
stop being Tosk.
The Hirogen would Hirogen like to be the hunted.
Yeah. Well, I'll bet you Hirogen would love to hunt a Tosk.
Oh, there's an episode for you.
There's a great what if.
Yeah. What if the Hirogen hunted Tosk? Okay, let's just think about this one for a minute. No, Tosk is dead. Their hunting gear is crazy compared to the guys who were hunting Tosk. The Hirogen have all this crazy gear.
They do. I'll bet you'd be a great hunt, though. I'm pretty sure Tosk would
Well, look, if
find ways.
if Tosk has the Great O'Brien helping him out, greatest man in Federation history,
A Union man.
a Union man.
Yeah, so coming back in part to the sort of charter for a second, what I was really going to say about Roddenberry and the sort of the sense in which he's sort of writing out what the Federation is going to be, is that he is interested, let's say, in socialism and communism, but he's also super interested in the Old West.
Yeah, he is.
And the sense of adventure and exploration. So what he really confects there is what I would call a kind of deeply American communism.
Yeah.
It's a post-capitalist world, but it's one that's committed to a certain sort of zealous interest in the outdoors and in, literal enterprise. Not just the ship, but the business of living. And I think that's how he's ended up reframing what is often described now as sort of capitalist or problematic or whatever by folks who would be in a similar camp as him, maybe, but manages to reframe it in a way that it's about the dignity of that striving in life, right? It's about uplifting the many by my own action and enriching myself thereby through my experience and through my self-development and growth.
Which is written kind of as the Vulcan influence. And Vulcan have sort of that communist influence. And it's funny you say it's like an American communism. It does kind of, the Federation does seem sort of like communism without the confines of communism in a way.
Certainly some of the ways in which we've seen it exist thus far in our world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because it seems to be quite mindful of some of the deep flaws that we've seen in some of those states. And to be really desirous of avoiding those, right? I think that's part of what World War III
It's like
is
communism
about.
meets individualism. Like everyone can be highly individualist in that society if they want.
Sure.
Anyone can do whatever they want, as long as they're not breaking the law, of course, which is the case anyway.
Yeah, but you're right. Like it's
But
something
you don't
that
have
somehow.
to. My point, I guess, is you don't have to contribute to the society if you don't want. At least in communism, as we see it, or at least as I understand it, is that you're kind of supposed to contribute to that commune, to that society.
I think that's probably pretty fair. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to, being a productive member of the society is extremely important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're
In
right.
the
I think in a
Federation, you
different
don't have
sense,
to do that.
in a
You don't-
different sense than we would talk about the sort of, Protestant work ethic in North America, right? And you're right. You don't, if you want to go be, like, just sit on a hillside and meditate your whole, you can literally do that. And you know what?
You can
Maybe
spend your
that
life in a holodeck,
Yep.
as long as you're paying your holodeck tab.
Right? And if you're paying with Federation credit, your tab's covered.
I guess.
Yep. I
we'll
guess.
get into that in a commerce episode soon, I think. But
Yeah, I mean, no, that's actually one of the just a brief comment on that.
which I
think
will say,
that
my
is-
2 semesters in Ferenginar may.
I
help
think
us
they
with
should
that
shed light on
episode.
this. But I think, the Federation credit is one of the fundamental political instruments of the Federation, right? In that it doesn't necessarily negate the currencies of any planet, but it harmonizes and allows all those currencies to be used as a sort of singular resource, which can be deployed at the, I don't know, it's not geopolitical, it's the astropolitical level in the service of building things like star bases or hospitals or whatever they're doing, right? Keeping up memory alpha wherever it sits out in that asteroid belt it's in. But yeah, all with an insistence on the fact that if a member world has specific reservations, those are going to be heard, which has got to make for a long political process, I assume, as well. Some things must get bogged down almost forever with some of these questions.
Yeah.
And we see that in some of the histories of the political and diplomatic missions that the Federation undertakes from time to time, right?
True. So, since you mentioned it earlier, I think perhaps the most political episode of Star Trek, at least as far as almost being kind of a plea or worst case scenario for political legislation, is past tense.
Sure. And I mean, that's a real politics as the taking up of the stuff of life into a considered reflection, sort of way. What is the common good that we're trying to achieve? And yeah, I mean, past tense is just such a bifurcated story in so many ways,
The quote I said at the start of the episode, nothing that is unimportant.
Absolutely. Yes. That is literally the claim of the people inside the districts, isn't it? Yeah. We are here. We are important. We exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, how many peoples around the world claim that?
Yeah.
Like
sure.
the right to exist
Throughout
is
history.
something we're being denied. Yeah, throughout history that's happened. And that cry of the oppressed in that
Benjamin
sense,
Sisko, or not Benny Russell, I should say.
Yeah. Right, they're real.
Mm-hmm.
That quality of what they're calling out is absolutely a fundamental question of politics as a sentient reality.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to recognize each other as sentients, as what Immanuel Kant would have said, an end in ourselves? How do we build a kingdom of ends where we recognize that each sentient being, and not even each sentient, but in a wider sense, each life form is a substance, a reality, an irreducible hypostasis in its own right,
Past tense.
Past tense. Yeah.
We're getting on to that year, right?
We are getting pretty close. And, some of the kinds of bifurcations that are present in past tense as an episode, which in that sense were a projection from 1996, 97, somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there.
Are in some respects eerily accurate in the sense of the growth of income inequality, as well as just the larger growth of simple wealth inequality. And
It's one of the episodes of Star Trek that gets pointed to as becoming more relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a prescient episode as an analysis of the dynamics of late 20th century America, but also late 20th century sort of Western society.
Yep.
As a larger meditation of the sort of neoliberal order.
And even developing countries, in a sense that it's just about employment in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and wealth
people want,
and wealth inequalities.
That at a fundamental level, people want to do productive things, not simply for the sake of as you say, not simply for the sake of making a wage, but because like our doing has value and it's meaningful. You know, and in that sense, it's a very Marxist understanding of labor, as opposed to, say, a Keynesian or a Lockean understanding of labor, where labor increases the value of something else. Marx points out that that fundamentally relies on the fact that human labor as an outflowing of our own faculty of causation, of affecting things in the world, has an irreducible value in itself. And that value, of course, can be alienated away from the laborer, which the Federation seems to be trying to do the opposite of for the most part. But the value is there nonetheless, right? And yeah, like that sense of the fruition and the dignity of work seems to be implicit in past tense as well.
Yes.
You know, especially as they're remembering backwards.
Because you see that in characters like Joseph Sisko and
Sure. Well, a lot of the
Picard's
colonists
brother, the people that we see on Earth. They're very
we meet a
proud
lot
of
of
what they
colonists out there who like the rugged lifestyle of not living on, say, a Galaxy-class starship, which is
do. You don't live on a Galaxy-class starship?
pretty swanky existence, let's be honest.
What?
You know, even Simon
whole
Tarsis,
time,
the
you told me
enlisted crewman, who is, you know, basically the bottom of the rank hierarchy, probably still has a better room than lots of colonists do. And unlimited replicator access. You know, not bad. Even a holodeck from time to time, probably.
I suppose it's unlimited on the Enterprise.
Gigajoules of energy to work with.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not like Voyager in the sense that they have to ration those things because they don't know when their next resupply is going to come from.
The Borg.
Sometimes. This Tuesday, the Borg. Next week, the Kazon. Who knows?
The Kazon got nothing they want.
Come on. All that hair product? Somebody on the Voyager wants that.
B'Elanna in the captain sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certain seasons.
It's true.
There's probably some hairspray.
But, you know,
Not the Doctor.
No. Has a powerful lack of need for that. I was trying to put
On several levels, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yet
in
again,
terms of
another character we're talking about who's bald by choice. We talked about Picard.
That's true.
Yourself.
That's true.
Oh, no.
Well, you know, I didn't start out bald by choice, but I've adopted the lifestyle now. I mean, the scene.
But the Doctor's a hologram. He could have put some hair on there if he wanted to.
That's true. Would have peppered a little bit up there. I admire his courage. He has the strengths of his convictions as a life form.
Exactly.
So now one of the lurking specters we've been dealing with a couple of times in this episode is maybe it's the subversive or the implicit or the authoritarian element, and that's something that I think because they've been so used to not having that in their politics, we see that erupt at several occasions in TNG and especially over the course of Deep Space Nine in ways that shock the crew members and cast members that we meet. And I think it's because their expectations are so formed that, well, the point of government is to make all of this thriving possible, right? Like, it's not to get in the way of anything. So that when, you know, the Lakota is coming straight at them, or when the security forces of Earth are testing everybody's blood to see if they're changelings, curfews, or when Admiral Sati is Nora Sati is running her drumhead trial in that odd courtroom in the Enterprise. But yeah, when they're running this, these are deeply shocking events for them because I think they run counter to the average everyday experience of people in the Federation, which is, when we look at like the texture of political life, that's a clear evolution, I think. You know, that they're shocked by the possibility of oppression. And, you know, maybe it does mirror the, you know, shelteredness of North America in the 80s and 90s, let's be honest. But in a real world sense, but I think it also reflects a certain idealism about the possibility of a productive political dominion that doesn't rely on the exporting of misery to various places, right? Or to various groups. So if you want to recall yourself to that, that would be the pair of a Homefront and Paradise Lost, with that wonderful scene with the the changeling in the shape of O'Brien.
All that over 4 changelings.
Oh,
All those precautions and lockdowns.
there were 4 of us.
4.
Oh, that's such a good scene. Oh man, it sets up the second half of that series so brilliantly.
4 is plenty.
Oh, yeah. 4 is clearly enough.
And he's like, and look at the havoc we've wrought.
Just let Cole Meany chew any scenery he wants. I mean, one of the beautiful things that Star Trek has really sort of straight up science fiction has going for it is that science fiction has this virtue, much in some ways like fantasy in an opposite direction, where we can take elements of our own experience, as we often talk about in these conversations, but foreground or put them in a context where they can be shown in a different light. And for better or for worse, Star Trek has done that pretty vigorously with politics in various ways. Whether it's the I've lost the name of it, but the great episode where Lwaxana Troi falls in love with the stellar scientist who's going to kill himself at the age of 60 because that's what his planet does. And her final act of love, acceptance, devotion, and respecting him as a life form, not just as the object of her desire, which is the play in the whole episode.
Yeah.
It is really beautiful to see because she comes off really weirdly through much of that episode.
Yeah,
and
she does.
There's a sense in which,
I mean, that character often comes off a little weirdly.
well, she's a bit odd. But I was watching this with my son the other day, who'd seen it for the first time, and he was mad at Lwaxana for most of the episode. And then finally she comes into the transporter room at the end, and he says, "Oh, she gets it." And I thought, well, that's hopeful about the younger generation, at least.
Mm-hmm.
That, his immediate reaction was, no, this is this guy's culture. You got to let him decide. You got to let him be who he is, which is interesting.
Voyager, Workforce.
Oh, now that's an interesting turn.
Great episode.
Give us a 2-second summary.
Sure. Well, political in the sense that it stems from a society that has decided through their politic to put no emphasis or resources into education and to put that into productivity and, probably management training and whatever it takes to keep their industry going. So they have no universities or, higher education facilities or capacities.
They've essentially lost the practice of teaching
at
high levels.
So they have no one skilled enough to do the highest level things.
Right.
So if something breaks in one of their factories, no one can fix it. So they basically commandeer ships and erase people's memories and put them to work in their factories. People who they know can run their own vessels and things, so
right.
have these skills. So somehow they manage to wipe the memories of people, but allow them to retain their skills.
Right. So at some point they had a very sophisticated level of technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then just, for whatever reason, got super singular focused on industry.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that things still had to be built and innovated and
yeah. Well, it is similar to that the planet Voyager meets earlier, which is peculiarly focused on pleasure. Everything is about whether it pleases you or not. Right? Yeah. And it's one of those things that Voyager can do very well as a sort of planet of the week type of episodic show. And again, it's one of those virtues of science fiction that you can say, well, what if there was a planet that they just focused on this, where they just did gladiatorial combat, say, as in the original series, or just focused on industry? Or the Binars are another example, perhaps, of that.
The pleasure thing wasn't new. Risa was all about that.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
But they're not so much. They're a resort more than a society.
Yeah, and I'm not clear on whether Risa had native inhabitants.
No, it was a built planet.
It's entirely terraformed.
The weather controls. It
just returns to like a howling
windstorm.
Yeah, which is what, again, one of those moments of interesting moments in what is otherwise not one of my favorite DS9 episodes, for sure. When, Quark and Lita and Julian and
Worf.
Dax and Worf go to Risa.
Yeah.
And Worf has the most
I believe that
giant
episode may
stick up
be
his
called
butt.
"He is who is without sin."
Well, that's certainly a good name for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Worf just goes on this like terrible,
He gets
toxic
caught up.
male, possessive boyfriend,
Yeah.
conservative politics binge
Yeah.
thing. Well, not even conservative, like
those-
just like real socially
Yeah,
conservative. more than
that's a
that.
very political episode as well. It's
Yeah.
good that you brought that one up.
Because the whole
You
thing
see
is
people like
premised on
that
this
around
group.
now that are just out on the street and just like that guy was on Risa, just espousing their.
And while we want a
political
society that is capable of supporting that action, the steps they take and the lengths they go to clearly break whatever social contract the Federation has. When they start breaking weather stations and bringing phasers into places and that sort of stuff, they become criminal actors in a way, because they have fundamentally certainly broken Risa's tradition of hospitality, but also have made fundamental assaults on what the Federation is about, which is respecting the life of other life forms.
Oh yeah, you got to sign some sort of waiver to go down to Risa, I'm sure.
I mean, why doesn't that guy just start a colony? That was always my question about that episode. If they were really that worried about it, why don't they set up a colony where they can live according to the principles they're thinking about and make themselves an example for the rest of the Federation to see their success, right? That to me would make more sense at galactic level politics.
He just needed Gemma Haron.
Maybe he did just need Jaemeel Haron.
That's what Vanessa Williams thought.
It's true. Oh.
What's up with that guy, and why is he not seeking Gemma Haron?
Oh no, that's just Captain Picard. He's had a prank played on him by Riker.
Picard also doesn't know how to seek Gemma Haron. That's true.
Not good at the politics of love.
Quark, on the other hand, carries 2 or 3 Horgons.
That's true. Over here, seeking tomorrow.
Gemma Haron. You may be surprised to hear this, Dave, but there is a course on Gemma Haron at the Ferengi School of Business.
A lot of film in that course.
You'll have to find out yourself. You know what it costs to go to 2 semesters at the
It's an
Ferengi School of
experiential
Business?
learning course. The question of how we manage our fundamental impulses is one of the things I think that's implied in, say, Aristotle's statement that we're all seeking a certain good, or that we're seeking the next best thing to what we might want, but that we can all agree on. And one of those questions is the management of conflict and violence.
Mm-hmm.
We see certain essays at that in, say, A Taste of Armageddon, which we've discussed already on this podcast, where 2 planets decide they're just going to calculate the statistical modeling of the war that had been going on for a long time, so they don't require the expense of building the weapons, but people just report to disintegration stations, because the war has become a kind of cultural artifact by this point, and a kind of weirdly managed savagery they don't know how to stop. But we also see it in places like the way in which, say, Picard struggles with Hugh as a possible weapon, but then, well, that's not a struggle for him at first. But the struggle comes with Hugh's growing individuation and sentience. And that goes back to your earlier point about the emphasis on individuation as one of the fundamental functions of life forms that we're trying to respect in this sort of Federation political life. And, you know, it's funny. There's one of my ancient dead friends, a guy called Pseudo Dionysius the Areopagite, who coined the word hierarchy, defined hierarchy itself, a hieros arche, a sort of sacred arrangement or ordering, as that arrangement in which each one finds the place of their flourishing, and those who are, and he was thinking principally about like ecclesiastical structures, but it works for him politically in all sorts of places. He says where those who are in higher positions promote their subordinates forward, right? That they look for ways to draw up and draw out the best in those people that they're working with, as somehow within their purview, like a captain of a starship or the leader of an away team or an admiral looking at their sector, right? And I think that's one of those notions which is so debased and deformed today because of our use of structures of that kind that has oddly and interestingly rehabilitated place in something like Starfleet or in the Federation, where they have actually found a way to build structures designed for flourishing, designed for the use of life forms, not for the management of life forms or the using up of life forms, you know? And if anything, I think that's one of the sort of inherent kind of political commitments of the Federation as a body in its history.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as we're sort of coming toward a conclusion of this episode, if you were to state
Yeah.
a sort of coherent, ongoing political message for Star Trek, what would it be?
Star Trek, the Federation, or both?
Well, let's say Star Trek first.
Diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And the IDIC.
Yeah,
Obviously.
yeah.
I think a lot of Star Trek, and I think the Federation, gets best summed up by the Vulcans. And I don't know if that's because of the early influence canonically or whatever. Perhaps they just embody that philosophy the best.
Mm-hmm.
But I think obviously IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where that amendment we were talking about comes into. It's just like we actually have to end slavery within our sphere of influence, not just within the Federation, but we should probably just like get rid of that everywhere if we can. You know, the needs of the many.
Yeah.
But also the nothing that is unimportant. Onward and upward. I don't know if that's politics or not, but
Well, like
know.
the Starfleet motto, ad astra per aspera, right?
Yeah.
To the stars through adversities and difficulties.
Yeah.
And I like that about the Federation as a political dominion. You know?
The light at the end of the tunnel. Something
Yeah.
to strive for. That's what the show more is. It's
Yeah.
kind of something to strive for, I feel.
And I think, you know, when you...
And which can give examples on,
Absolutely.
which it often has informed. Like so many Star Trek episodes we've talked about inform, or could inform our society as it is now.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, in that sense, I mean, dramatically, TV-wise, I mean, I'm just going to read it out here. Yeah. The foundational premise of the whole thing is space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. That's what that whole culture is interested in doing. There's a whole universe out here. Let's check it out. And to me, that is fundamentally exciting.
And to me, that's what it is. It's that future is the final frontier. See, that's what it is.
Yes.
Space is the final frontier in the show. But for us, the viewer, it's that future that is the final frontier.
Absolutely, and expansive in the sense that space is. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and maybe for us, space is the final frontier, but maybe we find our way beyond even that. End transmission. Oh, Stompy.
Ha! Good lad. Good lad.
Yep.
You will be missed.
He will.
Cool as a mountain, like.
Just as high. You know, I think they liked us, though.
I think they thought we were great. Quark didn't kick us out.
We didn't get a single shut up.
Not that I heard.
Good point. I just heard Dabo.
I did hear the demo.
Universal sign of enjoyment.
Congratulations, by the way.
Indeed. Just a second.
Yeah. Where did that guitar come from?
I have a Romulan grandfather, don't you know?
I didn't, but it explains a lot.
It does. All right, let's go. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
walk that promenade. Yeah, we're gonna rock that promenade. Be the talk of that promenade. Looking for a star drifter, not a shapeshifter. Lots to do and more to see. Sweet sticks from a dum-dum trio. Oddities, opportunities. Free advice, but not for cheapo. Gambling wheels, shady deals. Bring back here tomorrow, please. We're gonna walk that promenade. Oh yeah, we're gonna rock that promenade. Be the talk of that promenade. Looking for a star drifter, not a shapeshifter. Be anything you want to be. Both sailor on a starry sea, a warrior or ambassador. An enigma or a mystery, or just